Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host, Flavia Barris, as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media, including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur. Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Today we have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Whitney Popa. She is a communications consultant in the Pacific Northwest, just north of Seattle, and she helps small businesses tell and spread their stories. After many years of working for mostly large corporations in the public relations and social media world, she used a bad maternity leave policy as her final push to start her own shop, and she has not looked back. 4 years later and 2 kiddos later, she continues to evolve her business to fit her clients' needs, her passions, and her family. I can't wait to speak to you. Whitney, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I love hearing you read that.
Well, I mean, you have a great story. And sometimes we have to kind of pause and think about our own story and journey and how we got to where we are. I love that you use this bad maternity leave policy as your inspiration and your motivation for getting out of sort of corporate America. And so tell us a little bit about this bad maternity leave policy, because I have a feeling it wasn't particularly bad. It was just kind of typical, but typical is pretty bad. So Tell us about that.
Typical in the US is bad. And it was my last corporate job where I had been in all these roles where they were very sexy outwardly, like doing PR for Xbox, PR and social media for Nordstrom. And when I would go places and tell people that, because everybody asks you what you do, they would be so excited. I would watch their eyes widen, and then I would feel awful because I didn't love my job ever. There were aspects of each job that I loved, but there was always something off. And turns out that was me. But this last job was at one of the biggest salon and spa chains on the West Coast. And when I was hired, I was already pregnant. So I didn't qualify for any FMLA, and I had to hide my pregnancy, I guess, is the best way I can describe it. I was just nervous. And even though people aren't supposed to discriminate against you in the hiring process, it's not something that most women want to disclose. And so I kind of just wore big sweaters for a long time until one day after I was more than halfway through my pregnancy, I told my boss. And she said she was super supportive. I mean, what else do they say? And then the next day, she said, HR wants to talk to you. So go and meet with them. And I was super nervous because I kind of had a sense of what was coming, or that they might say something I didn't want to hear. And the way that she phrased it was, you need to reveal yourself to them, which was super awkward. And I mean, pregnancy hormones, what they are, I was already on edge. So I went across.
You walked in there with like a scarlet P on your sweater, you know?
Right, exactly. For a woman to feel ashamed of growing another human, and I mean, I could go on and on about that, is just kind of tragic. But I walked myself across the office and revealed myself to them. And they sat me down and they said, you get 6 weeks unpaid for vaginal and 8 weeks unpaid for a C-section. And I looked at them and I said, what if I don't want either of those options? What if that won't work for me? And this was my first child too. So I didn't know what I didn't know. And they just looked at me and said, 6 weeks for vaginal, 8 weeks for C-section. And the conversation was over. So I went back to my office and I just started crying. And I'm not a big work crier. I try not to be, but it just felt like kind of the final nail in the coffin of having all of these jobs where I didn't feel like I could bring my whole self to work. And at that time, that was a big part of who I was. And it's a symptom more of the system that a lot of companies are under, and their hands are tied in certain ways, but that doesn't mean it felt any better as the person on the receiving end of it.
Well, you know, a lot of people use this kind of thing that happens to them at work. It might not be necessarily pregnancy or maternity leave. It could be something like just disability leave, or when somebody needs family care time for maybe an aging parent, or even just to deal with their own issues. I mean, there could be a crisis in the family. And when they kind of come up against that wall of inflexibility and that kind of corporate mentality of, you're just a number and this is all math, and here's the number of days you get. And beyond that, we don't even have to keep you on staff. It's that for a lot of people is the impetus to sort of get them to springboard themselves to entrepreneurship, because they decide, wow, I literally don't own my life right now in this corporate job, and I want to own my life. And who knows how many more life circumstances are going to come up that will require some sort of flexibility in my work. So I don't know. No one's ever really done a study, but I'm curious to know how many people end up entrepreneurs because they've come up against this kind of rigid corporate mentality before.
Yeah, I'd love to see that too, especially in COVID times where a lot of women are forced out of their jobs for Zoom school and things like that. And I had always done a little bit of side work because my job I could do from anywhere. So I also struggled with that, where I had these super cool jobs, but the cultures that I was in were, you need to have your butt in seat from 9 to 5 every day. We need to see you here doing your work. And I always felt gross about that. And like, I could do my job from anywhere. I'm a super productive person. I'm accountable. I've never missed a deadline. And if I have, I communicated about beforehand. So I started just looking for gigs and reaching out to people and seeing what was out there. And in the meantime, a friend of a friend reached out to me and said, hey, I work at this really cool company in Seattle, a cooking company called Sur La Table. And we need somebody to help with our social media, but it can't be somebody that is in the office. It needs to be somebody who's a contractor, who has an LLC, who we can pay for whatever their budgeting purposes were. And I said, by then I was 30 plus weeks pregnant. And I said, I'm super pregnant. If you still want to talk to me, I'm down. And it all kind of started from there. So I had a little bit of a safety net where I had been kind of butting up against these shoulds of like, I shouldn't be a statistic. I shouldn't be one of those women who quits their job because they have a baby. And I was forced into this corner a little bit where I felt like I had few options for returning to work, but I still wanted to work my way. So this opportunity kind of coming out of the wind, out of nowhere, was a little bit of my saving grace. So it gave me the bravery that I really wanted to not come back.
And that was your springboard. So you said yes to Sur La Table, and you became a contractor for them. So that was really your first solo client on your own. Is that right?
I had another one where I had been replying to all these Craigslist ads. I love Craigslist. And I had a client where he owns a software as a service company. He was actually my first client, where I started managing his Twitter as an outreach to potential customers. So I was doing that on the side at night. And then Sur La Table reached out at the same time. So I felt like, okay, I have some weird momentum, even though I haven't really reached out to anybody or said that I was thinking about doing this. So why don't I just go for it? And then those two clients really gave me the push to make me feel like, okay, I can go out and make something of this more than just the question of can I?
And so you've got software on one hand, and then your second client is sort of luxury kitchen goods or luxury like culinary equipment. So what does your mix look like now? Did you end up niching down into an industry, or are your clients all over the board?
My niche is mostly right now small businesses. So Sur La Table was more of a medium-sized business, and I loved helping them. And it got to the point, I find myself where, especially on the social media side, when I grow their accounts to 200K plus, that's usually about the time where it seems like I need to go and help somebody else build until I need to go again. So with Sur La Table, I helped them for about 2 years. And then my Twitter client, I still have. So my mix is mostly B2C businesses that I love and would use myself. So I took that mentality actually from my first PR internship, where the company was built on the two owners, who are both women, said, our clients are products and services that we would use ourselves. And a lot of that was just fun hotels, stores, wine companies. And I've taken that into my own philosophy as well, because I've found through all of the jobs that I've had, whether the culture was good or not good for me, if I love the work, that matters. And I want to do the work because I love it. So I pick clients whose products and services I love and would use. And as for the software as a service client, he has a plugin for Gmail that allows you to do mail merging within that. So a lot of my other clients would use a service like his, and it's easy for me to understand and explain from a consumer standpoint. So that's really the lens that I look through when I'm assessing client fit.
And right now, I guess let's just give them a plug. What is one of your favorite brands that you're helping right now with promoting them on social media? Maybe one that needs that push because they're just starting out, but they're just one of your fave brands.
Oh, my favorite. I want to mention a couple. I want to break the rule a little bit. My favorite doesn't really need my help in shouting them out because everybody wants to go there right now, is Lakedale Resort on San Juan Island. And I do all of their social media. I have been for about 4 years, and they have 82 acres and all sorts of different kinds of accommodations. They have a yurt village. They have log cabins. They have a lodge that's adults only. They have campsites. They have a retro RV that you can stay in and book too. And it's just the most magical place in the world. Like, you could have your entire vacation just on their property, or you can also explore the island. And I recommend doing both. But they have been one of my longest clients, and they're just really amazing people too. And then one of my newer clients is a website called Thrifty Littles. And she is a mom in the Seattle area with 3 kids who started finding just awesome deals for babies and kids that she shares every day on her Instagram and Facebook. And I've been helping her a lot with blogging and also a little bit on the Instagram side. And her taste is just incredible. So all of the money she pays me goes right back into buying things that she suggests.
That's amazing. It's sort of like the barter circle, right?
For sure.
Well, both those clients sound great. I can see why you enjoy work, and the fact that you do have control. You can choose your own clients. That's one of the beauties of being on your own as a business. So what does an average day sort of look like for someone in your career field? Because there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast also for inspiration on ideas for entrepreneurship and ventures and different things that they can do to escape their own sort of golden handcuffs, right, at work. And a lot of people are interested in social media as an area where you can have a robust career. But tell us a little bit about what's an average day, a typical day. I mean, obviously things are going to be all over the place. There's all kinds of exceptions, but if you were to just kind of average it out, how many hours a day does it take to run a successful social media management company? And how big is your team? Or is this something someone can do on their own?
I think about that a lot because I think about how can I help people who are just starting out, like find clients, think about what their day looks like. And I think a lot of the answer to that question would irritate people because it depends. So based on my current client load, there's a lot of batch scheduling I do if I can. So some clients want more of a week ahead look. So let's just start with Monday. Mondays are usually my more admin days where I come into this co-working space that I help to manage, which has been an amazing gift because it helps me separate my home life and my work life. And I don't have screaming kids in the background as much, which is a huge distraction. So I'm able to focus. I take half days, 4 days a week where I come to this co-working space and I'm heads down on my client work. And I've also made it so that I only do meetings 2 days a week, just so that I don't feel fragmented and frazzled. And I kick off the week by just going down my to-do list. And I'm still very analog. I like to write it down, cross it off. I like to rewrite the list, cross things off, add things that I've already done and cross them off just to feel like I'm accomplishing things.
Oh, we're kindred spirits. Oh,
yeah,
yes.
I love to do that. And so on a Monday, I'll come in and I'll think about all my social media clients, what posts are upcoming for them. Do I have it scheduled? Do I need to? A lot of clients who don't understand social media as well as younger people do. And that's not to say that they don't understand things totally. It's just that there's a lot of intricacies where they want to have oversight to a certain extent. So I have to balance, like, how much do I tell them and how much do I just do? So that's something that each client kind of has a different management style around. And I have a few who want every copy of every post run past them. So for those, I make sure to outline what's coming up for the week, my draft copy, the content that it goes with, and I shoot that off for their approval. For others who are a little more hands off, I get all their stuff scheduled out and make sure that that's looking good. Then I'll go through, a lot of my clients use different management systems. So like Trello, Asana, I'll go through each one and see what my to-dos are and cross-reference them against my to-do list and make sure that I have deadlines in my mind of when this is getting done. And if it's something that I have any questions about, I'll shoot them a text and say, for example, if I'm writing a Thrifty Littles post, a blog post about games for preschoolers, then I'll text my client and say, hey, is Friday good for you for this? If she doesn't have a deadline assigned in the system, and usually she does, but if she doesn't, then I just double check with her because I'm very deadline driven. So even if somebody doesn't give me a deadline, I'll give one to them and I tell that to them up front in our onboarding of, hey, this is how I operate. So even if you're not giving me a deadline for something, I'll shoot one to you and be like, is X date good for you? And they'll say yes or no. And they know that I'm just kind of neurotic about that because I have to keep myself scheduled in a way that makes sense to my brain and helps me prioritize my day. And I don't have a team that helps me right now. I'm in this space of always thinking I have some work that I would like to maybe subcontract out. But right now, I like to have my hands on most of it. And adding that layer is going to take more hours away from my client work. So I have to find time to sit down and think about those next steps in the do I scale or not scale question. And to be frank, I'm very comfortable where I'm at right now, and I don't feel pressure to add to my team.
That makes perfect sense. It's one of those things where having team is fantastic in some ways because it lets you scale some different aspects of your business. But at the same time, a team requires management. So there's a time investment too, especially at the front end. There's a lot of time invested to create a team, get systems in place, train people. And I face that too. I think every entrepreneur probably faces that, especially the solopreneurs, the ones who start off solo, completely solo. And then there's that moment where you decide whether or not to start adding team members. And for you, there's probably a lot of demands on your time, especially because you don't yet, and maybe you never will take that step to have someone to screen your email or screen your calls. And so I'm sure clients reach out to you. Things come up that are maybe more urgent, like, oh, we've just decided to do this big campaign. Can you get on it? And it might disrupt your previously scheduled calendar. What do you do to maintain time and sort of guard your family time and hobby time and fun time when there's all of these demands coming at you from different directions?
The short answer to that question is I don't think I do it that well right now, but what has helped me a ton is that separation. So those 4 days a week where that's my work time and I'm not interrupted by other house kid things is super helpful. And then I go home and I have my house and kid things time. And I try to not check in very much. I was trained at Edelman, which is the #1 independent PR agency in the world. So we were trained to reply within 60 minutes to our clients and have that sense of urgency. And I haven't yet trained myself out of that entirely. What's funny about it is I had a short stint at Amazon and my boss there was very adamant about helping train me out of the urgency that I always felt to reply. And she said, give yourself time to reply, give yourself even 12, 24 hours so that you can maybe draft something, but don't send it. Or I'm a big fan of the delay deliver feature on any kind of email platform that you use, just to protect everybody else's time as well. And I kind of do it subliminally with my clients where I'll have let's say back to Monday, I'm scheduling all these things. And if I know that there's something going on for them or they're in a different time zone, I'll schedule it to go out at the next morning or later in the afternoon when I think they might have more bandwidth for it. I'll write emails at night sometimes, but I'll never send them at that time. I'll delay deliver them until the next morning so that we're kind of training each other of what are the hours that I'm available and able to help you, and what are the hours that I'm not. And with multiple clients, that can be difficult to set the expectation. And sometimes you have to do it over and over. But I'm not afraid to reinforce when I'm available and when I'm not. And the whole reason I created my company was so that I could do that. So I can work when I am able to work, and then let them know, hey, I'm not available right now. And it's worked pretty well overall. It's just my personal like urgency factor where I want to be accountable and available is always at odds with my, you created this for the flexibility.
Well, the send delay feature in email management is fantastic. I agree with that. There's also different kinds of software that will let you set reminders to yourself. So you can send an email and you can set yourself a reminder as you send it that says, bring this back in my inbox if I haven't heard back from this person in 3 days. And so it's a nice way to sort of outsource these things to an automated system so that you're not trying to hold all of this in your head at one time. Because I think that's what solopreneurs tend to do is we hold all these to-do lists and dreams and goals and action items and, oh, people I need to get back to, people who need to get back to me. And it just kind of is all held in your head, almost like this puppet master that's trying to control like 100 puppets down below. But what you really need to do sometimes is automate it, outsource it. And technology is a great way to do that. What are some other technology tools or hacks or things that you do that really help you stay hyper efficient?
My favorite thing that after 4 years of having my company, that I finally decided to buy was an admin system. So I use Bonsai, which is targeted mostly for freelancers. I looked into HoneyBook a little bit, but it felt more for photographers. So I found out about Bonsai actually through a person on TikTok. I love TikTok. And I've been using that for about 6 months. And previously, I was doing everything like manually updating and sending out my invoices. And I did it because I could. I have the ability to update the date on these and send them out. But then I found myself chasing money. And that felt really gross to me, sending those follow-ups. And even that part, it's only like $20 a month. But even the part of the system that reminds them to pay me has made it pay for itself over and over and over again. I love Bonsai and like sing its praises forever. So that part of outsourcing my administrative systems has, I think, created room for me to bring on more clients, which has just been so fun.
That's an awesome tip. And not just Bonsai, there's, like you said, HoneyBook and quite a few. Some of them are more industry specific than others. I'm aware of one that is rebranding, actually. It's funny, I said I'm aware of it because it's called Aware Now. They're rebranding. Their new name is going to be Profi, like professional, like being a Profi, Profi. I just saw the email announcing the branding change. And that one's aimed more at like holistic healthcare practitioners, doctors, chiropractors, massage therapists, more for the medical field. Although I think part of their rebranding, and you're in PR, and so this is probably more interesting to you than for most, but part of that rebranding is they're expanding into helping coaches, like personal coaches, I think more into like the fitness world as well, like personal trainers, and then just more into the personal development space too, like life coaches. And I think that's part of their big rebrand. That's another one that's an all-in-one. There's a few others as well. Sweet Dash comes to mind. And what this really means as a freelancer, so if you're out there and you're listening to this and you are a freelancer, you have your own business, you have your own client base, but you find yourself spending way too much time managing things like invoicing or chasing down payments, accounts payable, accounts receivable, all of that, look into one of these systems. Because like you were saying, for $20 a month, you have just now given yourself so much mental space and relief, and it's so worth it.
Yeah. And a lot of it for me was changing my mindset around money of like, this is an expense versus this is something that will end up making you more money. And not that money is everything, but that part of it, I had kind of a negative block around it of like feeling tight around my money and my income and where everything was going. And once I started investing more in my company, because I had been under all of these umbrellas where you spend their money. And now that I had to manage my own income and money and accounting and everything, I felt very tied to it. And like, okay, I need to keep track of every cent and keep every cent, when really spending that thoughtfully made so much more room for everything else and for me to have more fun.
Definitely for more fun. And what do you do for fun? So, what are some things that having your own business allows you to do today that you couldn't do back when you were with the company with the terrible maternity leave policy?
I don't have to ask permission for anything, which is the biggest thing that has been a change in my life and made me so happy. And I cut out in the middle of the day to take my kids to lunch. Like I said, in the afternoons, that's my time with them. So just this past Monday, I took my son over to my mom's house. She's getting a remodel done. And we went to look at the progress and sat and ate donuts with her for the afternoon, and then stopped at the library on the way home. And that's not something that I could ever do before. You feel like you have to get up and ask your boss for permission to go to the bathroom at some places. And I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like people telling me what I was worth and what I could do and being a slave to somebody else's time. So having that time with my kids and just being able to cut out at 4 and go play outside, that's been really great. My husband and I are big foodies, so we like to go around and try different things to eat, and we're on baby time too. So we go have dinner at 5, and it's really fun to beat the crowds and be able to eat all this great food and expose them to different cuisines and cultures. And then on the weekends, we have been talking about how our daughter is turning 2. She's our youngest. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old almost. And we have more grandparent help now in the area. Both of our families moved here recently. So we have help so that we can go out, and maybe we were talking about maybe on a weekday going and doing a hike. Every month we're going to go on a hike in a different area. And when I say hike, I don't mean that we are super outdoorsy. We like to slowly walk up gradual hills. So I'm always asking him like, okay.
That's how I hike. So you're not alone.
I got this guide called the Creaky Knees Guide, like for old people. And it has how many canes of how hard things are. So that's like how I gauge what's going to be a fun hike for us. Like we're looking for views that aren't super exerting to get to. So we like to go out and kind of explore outside and pack a really amazing picnic and have fun with it. And I also have been adding in a workout class during my work time that's actually been helping me really mentally clear my head so that when I do come and sit in front of my laptop, because I am a very efficient person, I feel completely clear-headed. And I do that on top of journaling in the morning as well.
So I ask that question to guests often. What do you do for fun? What do you do in your spare time? What are your hobbies? Just as a reminder to all of us that these things are important aspects of life. I mean, having things you enjoy doing that's completely separate from work, it's just good for the soul. I mean, it should be like prescribed. Every doctor should prescribe hobbies. It's like,
absolutely,
take 2 of these, take up 2 new hobbies and call me in the morning, because it really is. It gives a lot of depth to life. But also some people listen to this podcast, some listeners out there, you're commuting to your grind. I mean, you're still in it and you are listening for inspiration and to sort of see if there is light at the end of the tunnel and if there's a way to live differently and live more free and be more in control of your own life. So I think stories like yours, even something as simple as saying, yeah, we as a family want to start hiking more. And guess what? We'd rather do it during the week when it's not so crowded instead of on a Saturday or Sunday when everyone else is on the trail. And I love that because it's a reminder to all of us at the blessings of being self-employed and controlling your own schedule and destiny. And it's great.
Yeah. Yes, I wouldn't trade it. I have friends who ask me, there's 2 different types of people, 2 types of questions that I get on either end. People asking me when I'm going to go back into an office job, and then people asking me when I'm going to scale my business. And to both of those questions, I'm responding lately like I'm content where I am. And I hope to never go back into an office unless I have all of these different things in place, which would be pretty difficult to find. So there's a lot of like headspace around, people don't really understand solopreneurs as much as they understand you have an office job or you're the owner of a corporation that you want to build into this huge skyscraper thing. And there's a lot of room in the middle.
So much room in the middle. And for anyone that's building their business right now, they're thinking of maybe jumping ship from their corporate job, or maybe they've just had this dream and they're going to jump in. As someone who helps brands and small businesses scale and grow their followership, what is one piece of advice that you can tell people that they should do from day one to help create and grow their brand?
this is going to be some somewhat random advice for a lot of people listening, but I hope that they hear me out. It's getting to know yourself a little bit better. And I've done that I have a reading goal every year where it forces me to sit down and read. And it's one of the things that I enjoy the most in the world. And I read a lot of self-helpy type books, but in the past year, I've gotten into human design. And by knowing a lot of those things, and people do enneagrams and astrology and all of that, I've found human design to be the most helpful because it helps you know your strategy for things and how you show up in the world and what's best for you. So for example, when building your business, if I had even just pulled a free profile for myself, then I would have known the best way for me to attract clients. And knowing that would have changed everything from the beginning of my business because I would have been more intentional about how I brought these clients in. So for example, you give them where you were born and what day and time. That's all they need to pull a profile. And there's a lot of free resources out on the internet. And it's a lot at first when you see the graph, but you'll get some information of like your type and your profile. The most important thing for me was my type. And I'm a manifesting generator. And I've applied that to my business. It's been the most helpful for me in business because I know that I'm not meant to cold email people. So let's say I wanted to start my business and I didn't know where to begin. And you think, oh, you just start reaching out to people who you want to help. And that works for some people. But for my profile, because I'm a manifesting generator, I'm supposed to put my information out there and people will come to me. That's how I've found almost all of my clients. The Sur La Table example, it was a friend of a friend who knew that I did this type of work. So they reached out to me. And last year, when my business suffered a little bit because of the pandemic, I was reaching out to people like crazy. And I sent probably over 100 cold emails to people. And I think I got maybe 1 or 2 responses total, and those were no's. And it was a huge waste of time for me. If I had known before then that this is how I was built. And also I felt gross doing it. It didn't feel right to me. So that more feminine approach to marketing where I tell the world, this is what I do, this is what I like doing, and hold faith that the right people will come to me has really paid off for me. And it's not something that I think a lot of people know or think about. And it sounds woo-woo, but it's worked wonders in my life.
That's amazing. What a theory. Do you use that for your clients as well? So if you have, do you give a personality type to a brand itself? Can a company have a style or a type? And should their marketing and social media be maybe the way you market the resort, the islands would be different than the way you market the company that does the great tools and things and clothing and things for kids?
We could, absolutely. I think it would depend more on the owners and what their types are and what feels comfortable to them. I've been having a lot of conversations with my baby gear and guides client about what feels right to her. And that all goes back to part of your design. So knowing that is super important for anybody, but a brand itself doesn't really have a human design, but we do persona work where we would come up with the ideal customer. Who are you talking to? And how do they talk? What do they believe? What do they want? Where do they shop? And that's really helpful work for brands to do so that when you're speaking as the brand, it's just intuitive. You don't have to sit and think what word makes the most sense here. It's more of you embody that brand because you've done that work.
Such great advice, all of it that you've given, and you're inspirational. And I think there may even be someone who's sitting out there listening who is pregnant and has been wearing baggy sweaters and is hiding it because they know that it's something that they feel, it's illegal to discriminate against them. However, just because something's illegal doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It's sort of like saying, well, it's illegal to go above the speed limit on the freeway, but plenty of people do it anyways. And I think that is always a concern. So I think you've inspired a lot of people listening. You've inspired me with your story. I think your story is amazing. How do people reach out and connect with you if either they're looking for someone to work with social media or just want to connect with you and congratulate you on what you've done and how you've built your business, or maybe ask you for advice on growing their own social media company?
Sure. I'm everywhere and I'm very easy to find. I actually Googled myself the other day and was like, whoa, you're a little too easy to find. But The first result is my Instagram, and that's at Whit Popa. I'm at Whit Popa everywhere that those handles exist. And my website is popaandassociates.com.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. You're an amazing person, and I'm so glad to get to know you better.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness. But money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use a coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.